it's something that we need to be aware of, that as technology swoops us all up, and they're usually very vulnerable people that have no means and no resources to be part of this new revolution, this technological revolution. They have no means to talk to their children, vice versa. They have no way to open up
Horrifying.
documents. They have no means to fill out application forms now. Forms are all online where it's clicking and pointing, and then if you're timed out, then you have to re-examine the form, and it becomes extremely frustrating. And you actually need an IT person for somebody to fill out a parenting order or something online. It's terrible.
Yeah, I've done some government forms in my time,
Yeah,
even online, and yeah, even I've struggled through it, and I'm as tech savvy as it gets, Mark.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think pretty close to it, even if they don't say it outright. They're pushing people to use to go online, to use technology to do these tasks, right? To complete these forms, to get what they need. But yet they won't give them the means to do that when the people don't have it, right? If you don't have a Chromebook, at least a Chromebook to go online and do this stuff, or a phone. Doesn't have to be an iPhone 13 Pro Max, but something to go online and do this when they're shutting people out of their offices, for goodness sake. In this episode of Kevin Talks Tech, I'll give you a sense of what to expect in regards to this podcast. I'll cover some of the latest tech news stories as well and give my thoughts on them. After that, I'll preview some of what's available on my website in terms of videos and blog posts. Then I'll have a conversation with Mark Cherrington, who is part of the organization called Coalition for Justice and Human Rights in Edmonton. He assists them in getting their basic needs met and getting them out of dangerous or even deadly situations. He also talks about how he uses technology in his day-to-day work in helping those people, and the struggles they face as everything seems to be moving online. This is episode 4 of Kevin Talks Tech, a conversation with Mark Cherrington. Hello, welcome. My name is Kevin. This podcast complements my website, kevincanfixit.ca, which launched in June of this year. There, you will find free and paid videos and blog posts that will help you better understand and use your technology. This will allow you to avoid paying high hourly rates whenever possible, or waiting for days for your computer to be fixed somewhere else. You can take a look at the free videos and blog posts that I have and sign up for the free 2-week trial, no credit card required. Some of the videos and blog posts that you can take a look at right now through your free 2-week trial or through your membership if you have an annual or monthly plan include how to download, install, and use Super Anti-Spyware, how to download, install, and use IOBIT's Advanced System Care, how to disable startup items in Windows 10, and more. And in my latest monthly column, I answer the question, do I really need an antivirus on my computer? Simply put, the answer is yes, and I'll explain why in that column. Kevin Talks Tech consists of 3 parts. First, we'll look at the latest technology news, and I'll provide my thoughts on why I think you should care. Secondly, I'll have a conversation with a guest. In this episode, I'll be talking to Mark Cherrington a little bit later. In the general sense, we'll talk about their home-based business or the fact that they simply be working from home and how they got started. Then I'll ask them what frustrates them about their technology and what they love about it. After that, I'll ask them a few more questions, and then I'll answer a tech-related question if they have one, and Mark does. Third, later on in future episodes, I'll answer a couple of listener or member tech-related questions. Don't worry about scrambling to write everything down. You'll find show notes, links, and a transcript over at kevintalkstech.ca. Apple will introduce lockdown mode in iOS 16, which will be widely available in September of this year, 2022. Lockdown mode will block many message types and, I quote, disables link previews, turns off certain web browsing technology by default, blocks invitations and FaceTime calls from unknown sources, meaning you have to connect with them first before they can connect back with you, It also locks down devices to wired USB connections to the computer, so you won't be able to use a wireless method to share information between devices, as you might be used to doing. This will also apply to when the device is locked, and it disables the ability to add new configuration profiles or enroll in mobile device management. In other words, lockdown mode locks down the device hard. Lockdown mode is an optional and extreme level of protection for your devices. It's a clear response to the growing use of targeted, typically state-sponsored, attacks on high-profile and high-risk individuals, such as journalists, activists, and politicians. Apple admits that the vast majority of users will never need lockdown mode, but it will be offered to everyone again in iOS 16, or a device that's able to run iOS 16, as it will be very useful for those in dangerous situations or trying to escape dangerous situations. Simply put, it puts your device, be it iPhone, your iPad, or even your Mac, into a highly secured state that protects your information from targeted attacks and surveillance. My thoughts? Given how connected our devices are these days, and the increased use of targeted surveillance and attacks, albeit usually directed toward high-profile and, as I said, high-risk individuals, giving everyone with an Apple device the ability to turn this on is long overdue. That said, Apple is widely known for taking its time to get things right, even for those who aren't high-profile or high-risk individuals. It will protect those in dangerous situations and will increase their ability to protect their information and even get out of these situations without being compromised, or at least without being further compromised. It could honestly save lives, and that's a very good thing. We will get a much better sense of lockdown mode when Apple announces it officially, presumably at their September event, that's what the tech press is saying, in September at their usual fall launch event. Renee Ritchie has an excellent explainer video about lockdown mode that is worth watching for those considering using it. I have linked to that video in the show notes and in the description for this video. As many of us are likely aware, the Rogers network recently had a huge outage, nationwide outage in fact, and was down for some people as long as 3 days. It affected pretty much everything connected to the Rogers network, including hospitals and small businesses, and of course, individual customers, some of whom couldn't even call 911. Rogers has apologized and initially offered 2 days credit, but is now, due to the backlash, offering 5 days credit. A class action lawsuit is also happening, or at least getting started, as people and businesses look to recoup their costs. They're looking for compensation, given the resulting stress and frustration. My thoughts? This is the second time in just over a year that Rogers has had a major network outage across the country, and although it may inspire someone to switch, the choices out there aren't much better. The solution is complicated, but we must pressure our governments to end the monopoly of these carriers and allow for more competition in the market. Rogers is promising it won't allow this to happen again, but frankly, I'll believe that when it proves to be true. Is there a tech news story you think I should cover? Please email me at news@kevintalkstech.ca. You can also find that in the show notes. Please consider this a disclaimer for the nature of this conversation in regards to the work Mark Cherrington and his team does. In part 1 of this conversation, we mostly focus on his organization, the Coalition for Justice and Human Rights, and how technology plays a part in the important work they do and the challenges they face. We also touch on some of the more uncomfortable, shocking, and dangerous situations he's encountered over his decades of experience. To give you a sense of what I mean, in part 2 of episode 4, he talks about a suicidal Indigenous miner and how he prevented at least one opportunity for her to kill herself, though those in charge didn't seem to care. He also tells, again from his perspective, the story of a miner who was sexually exploited, though she grew up to have a seemingly much more normal life. He tells these stories in part 2 of this conversation, which you can hear in 2 weeks. Please, I implore you, don't let this deter you from watching or reading. I have also included some provided images in the video version of this podcast to emphasize his points and bring incredibly needed attention and hopefully resources to the most vulnerable in our society. We need to pay attention to this, and push our leaders and politicians to do the same. Because honestly, these situations are almost completely preventable. These stories are not easy to hear, but are necessary to hear, and may be triggering for some people. Please be aware that we do not, at any point, divulge personal details or identifiable information of any of the people he and his team have helped, similar to what he shares on social media. And Mark makes a point to use fake names. I am deeply proud and honored to feature Mark and his stories in this podcast, and I hope you will appreciate them as well. Without further ado, let's go to that conversation. Hello, Mark.
Hello.
It's so good to have you on the podcast today. Thank you for making time.
Well, thank you for having me.
Truly a pleasure to have this conversation with you. I've wanted to talk to you for a long time.
Oh, that's great, Kevin. Yeah, happy to share whatever experiences I have and insight, and yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, with technology, and I'm hoping you can share some details. I know you will. We've talked about that in terms of the work that you do and the kind of people that you help. I think that's we're going to spend some time on that today. So just so everybody knows, with this podcast, this particular episode, if you will, is going to be a two-parter. So the first hour, roughly, we're going to talk about Mark and his technology and how he uses it with his organization, the Coalition for Justice and Human Rights, and then, of course, how it's intertwined, for lack of a better word, in how he helps people, right? How you help people, Mark. So the first hour, like I said, we'll cover tech, and then we'll get into more in terms of the kind of work that you do, because I really want to bring attention to it and make people aware of it. I know that you ask for donations and so forth, and we'll cover that as well. So, Mark, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and a bit about your organization, the Coalition for Justice and Human Rights, as I said, and how you help people? Can maybe take us into that a bit?
Sure. So I'm with the Coalition for Justice and Human Rights, which is a group of like-minded people who have a passion for human rights and ensuring that people have access to justice and are treated with dignity. And you wouldn't think you would really need a program like that or an agency like that in a first world country and in such a wealthy province as Alberta, but we do, and that's unfortunate. And it's also unfortunate that I'm kept very, very busy dealing with such issues. My work in social justice began about 30 years ago, and it evolved all the way to working with ADAC in those days, which is now AHS Addictions, then working with Children's Services, working with Alberta Justice. And then I ended up working with legal aid for 25 years. And when I first started with legal aid, again, this is just my opinion, it was very apolitical and independent, but it slowly evolved to becoming more sensitive to government, to the point where I became a real thorn in their paw. And they let me go after 25 years without cause. They restructured, and I got a lawyer, and that allowed me other opportunities. And now I've been doing the same thing that I've been doing at Legal Aid and even ADAC and welfare and justice, but just independently working on my own. I and the other members of the coalition are a free service. We work solely on donations. We have no government funding. They can't push us this way or push us that way. And that's kind of the way that we think is important to working with vulnerable people of all sorts of demographics, ages, cultures, backgrounds, not having a penny to throw. So it's just a wide group of people, and and we get many of our referrals are self referrals, or I get referrals from lawyers or people, even people within the field who can't advocate for their clients in the way they feel they want to, refer the clients to me to advocate, which is telling of these systems, particularly the child welfare system, where I get a lot of my referrals from staff at child welfare, but they just don't talk about it
Mm.
to they can't advocate the way they want to, so they send it to my way.
But they want to. That's interesting.
Oh yeah,
Mm.
everybody that gets in this field, I mean, I always say if you're a police officer or you're a first responder person on the phones or you're a firefighter or you're a child welfare worker or you're a teacher, anybody who gets involved in humanities wants to help people, wants to make a difference in their community. And sometimes we all forget that in the end things become very adversarial, but quite frankly, we are fighting for the same outcome, a better community, a better person,
Hmm.
helping somebody some way. We just different ways of doing it.
No, that it's a tough position that everybody involved gets put in, right? You have to be very motivated and very passionate about this, and clearly you are. 30 plus years doing it. I know you started off with, you said legal aid, and I won't try to put salt in that wound, but you moved on from that after
Yeah.
a long time there. To be doing what you're doing and to be as busy as you are. I suppose some days, I mean, obviously they want to, these individuals at least, I'm not sure if they're allowed to, but the individuals at least aren't advocating as much as maybe they want to, for services like yours. But at the same time, maybe they're kind of thinking they don't want to overwhelm you either, because you're only one organ, not to downplay it, but only one organization, only one person, at least from work that I know that you do. I'm not sure if there are others in your organization within Coalition for Justice and Human Rights that help you out, or are you the guy on the front lines?
I'm pretty well the guy on the front lines. All the members within the coalition certainly help out on specific cases, and some of those cases I'm not even involved in. But by and large, I think a lot of the referrals come my way. Also is I make public. I talk about the referrals.
Mm-hmm.
I bring to light some of the injustices and lacks of services and just dumbfounding things that happened in our community, and where the others they're more like submarines. They're silent killers. they're under the radar in the water,
Yeah.
and they fight that way, and they're very effective as well.
Well, maybe we'll get into this a little more in the second hour of our conversation. But to bring it back to technology for a moment, to switch gears, because I want to keep on track if we could.
Oh, sure.
It's easy to get I want to say lost, but it's easy to get really into the work that you do, because I just find it fascinating. What frustrates you the most about your technology, and why, and how do you tend to overcome that?
I find that's frustrating is because I'm very mobile and it's very focused on my technology coming with me. I carry a handbag, and everything in that handbag, that technology needs to follow me and work. So I have like a tablet and a keyboard. I have an MP3 recorder. I have my phone. Way back when I was working for legal aid in the early 2000s, I actually had a camera looped around my belt.
Jeez.
And I have
big old
thousands.
camera, yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's always been an issue about, somebody's in crisis and you need to get that information down and record that. And so,
Document it, yeah.
and saying, can you just hang on a sec? Just hang on a sec. And wait. Oh, I need a battery. Oh, that's not working. Darn, I left that in the car. It's that kind of clunkiness. And I think it's related a lot to me in some ways, because I just don't really, I wouldn't say I'm not tech savvy, but I'm certainly not gifted in technology. And it's almost like you have to be gifted still in technology to use it effectively. And a lot of employers won't provide those fundings and those types of training to allow people to use the technology on a mobile process. So it's really important, like when you're dealing with a family in crisis, children have just been apprehended, and you have to sit the parent, usually it's just one parent, down and talk to them about what happened and everything like that. And I have my MP3 recorder for that. So my three things are my tablet, my MP3 recorder, and my phone.
The part that frustrates you, excuse me, it comes down to partly anyway, the clunkiness of it, where you're not trying to figure out how to make something work in order to document what you need to document, right? Uh,
Exactly.
okay, and then also in the notes here about kind of back and forth emails, you said so much clicking and pointing, nothing seems compatible. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, so you have apps and you have platforms where you want to document things or you want to attach pictures or things like that. And if I'm using my phone and then all of a sudden I've got to attach a photo to my Google account, all of a sudden it says, oh, it's going to randomly ask me for my password. What the hell? My password? Oh, that's on my computer, my desktop, or on my laptop. And it's just that kind of situations where you just want flow. You don't want to
Mm,
be you don't want to be thinking about technology. You want to be thinking about the information that's being given and the means to record that information or document that information so that it's accurate and that it's confidential. It's a big thing is confidentiality, and as well as that it's able to interact with other platforms. So a really good example is someone will send me a PDF file, and for some reason I'll try to open it on my phone,
right.
and it's some sort of weird glitch where if the sender is Adobe, it sort of pushes you and forces you to use Adobe to open it. And I don't know if people have also seen that. It says, please wait, we're working on that. And just spins and spins and spins. So then when you make Adobe your primary default applicator application, of course it opens up instantly. So it's that lack of
Right.
interaction between software and hardware, and I think it's done on purpose. And this is I'm no expert in this, but I feel like Adobe or some of these other companies want you to be using their software,
They
so they make
absolutely do.
things,
Yeah,
so they
Adobe.
push
Yep.
you
Yep.
and quite frankly, for me and the reasons I need it and when I need it and how quickly I need it, if I'm going to court and a judge asks me for a document, I don't want to be staring at Adobe saying, please wait, be patient, or whatever when you're in court.
Yeah.
You want something to be able to be opened quickly, effectively.
Yeah. Well,
Technology just isn't there. And I think it's partly because of the competition. And people say competition is good. And in many ways it isn't. It is. But in some ways it wants you and it makes life difficult for you if you don't use all of brand X. And if brand Y sends you something and you're not using and all you're using is brand X, you can't interact brand Y with brand X. You can't have XY chromosome, you can only have Y chromosomes. And it's just very frustrating, and I don't like that in many ways. And same with Google asking for your password every fourth time you open it. Those kinds of things
yeah,
really.
a lot of what you're talking about in terms of opening the kind of documents, saving passwords, it comes down to default applications, default settings. I've encountered this myself. I mean, I have an iPhone, but I also have a Android iPod. I don't know what they call. I listen to
Yeah,
podcasts on it.
yeah, yeah,
It's a G9 Power. A similar situation on that, and then I have a Pixel 6 for the business. On each of these devices, particularly the iPhone because I use it the most, where it'll ask like when you open a file, it should ask anyway that do you want to what application would you like to open this file in?
yeah.
So you got to do the list. I don't have Adobe PDF anything on my phone because I've encountered difficulties like that before with it. In fact, I don't have any PDF app on my phone because I find that when I don't have that, then a specific application for that purpose installed, then the operating system, iOS, whatever, will prompt you to say, okay, what would you like us to essentially try to open this file in?
Yeah.
And then typically with PDFs, at least in modern times, recent years, browsers like Firefox and Chrome, etc., Safari can you can view PDFs there as well. That'll be in the list, or you can add it to that list kind of before you have to be panicking, and then you'll just open the browser, and that tends to work pretty flawlessly. I even do that on my computer, even though it's a PDF viewer that doesn't interfere with things, so that's kind of nice.
Yeah,
Um,
and I have some of that too, but for me it's frustrating,
yes,
and it's nothing that's going to change my life. When a mother gets an email from a child welfare worker and their children have been apprehended,
right.
and I get this complaint a lot of times. They can't even open up the form to read why their children were apprehended.
Oh God.
And because they've got a text app and they have no money for internet, or they have to go, I don't know, some coffee shop or something,
I
and
hear you.
their phone screen's all cracked, and you get this crappy little email attachment that literally it sometimes almost causes a mental breakdown.
Yes,
You're sort of like reading instructions how to use a fire hose while your house is burning down, and it's that kind of frustration with tech
it
that
is.
I think people that are tech savvy, they have that left brain that just formulates all these sorts of solutions in whatever resources you have. But for
Yeah,
us right brain Beethoven likes that just go by feeling and emotion, it's a nightmare. And
I
I
hear you.
wish I
Yeah.
wish I wish there was some sort of legislation stating that all these platforms and all these apps had to open up on if you had an Android phone or an iPhone, that it would automatically open up. That would be a requirement for the apps, because it's just trying to use them or their sort of platforms opposed to the
Mhm.
competitors, and it's not useful in my experience.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, clearly, I've been thinking about it just in terms of inconvenience. But yeah, when you're in a situation like that where you've got court documents or what have you, that this panicking mother or father needs to open up in order to see what they have to do, right? This is need to know information, and if they can't open that document, figure out how to open that document, then that's incredibly stressful.
And one of the big issues over the COVID and continues now is that child welfare had to go mobile and had to establish connections. So mothers and fathers could not visit their children anymore because of COVID. So the only way to interact is through Zoom or
Oh wow.
whatever we're using right now. But guess what? You have your 11-year-old cracked iPhone, your iPhone
Yeah.
4.
Oh God. Yeah.
And how do you have a visit with your child when you can't even interact? And so I advocated actually very hard with children's services at the higher levels that they at least provide these parents and these children's means to communicate effectively
God.
mobily.
Yes. Yeah.
Trying to get $300 from child welfare to pay for a 5-year-old's Chromebook so she can have visits with her parent. Child welfare just wouldn't get it. They wouldn't understand it. It was very frustrating for me. And now, in that COVID is pretty sensed, what's bothering me is child welfare is in the process of isolating themselves. They aren't community friendly, in my appointment. I just tweeted about something where we had to ding a doorbell and we went into this bunker, and it was a sterile, cold foyer with bulletproof shattered windows and metal mailboxes that you put documents through. And the staff that greeted me, it wasn't a greet, it was more of a, what are you doing here, we only work by appointments. And when I questioned why the foyer looks like this, they said, oh, nobody, the public will not be allowed into our offices anymore. And so it's this whole, it might be not specific to technology, but it's in the same vein where you are isolating very vulnerable people because of, and you're doing it
Yeah.
with malice, and you're doing it on purpose, to convenience you, to make things more efficient for you, to make things
I was
more
going to say
economical for you.
it's amazing what they'll spend money on, right?
Well, they're spending, and maybe I'm guilty of that too. You're spending money on technology, but at least I know not to have Zoom meetings with my clients because it's not going to happen. And you
Well,
have
but the reason that's
agencies.
not going to happen is for what you just said, right? Where they have these devices that they can't, if they have devices at all, that they can't they can't effectively have those conversations over a video call with their
Ex-
11-year-old iPhone, for example.
yeah, 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 exactly. And it's something that we need to be aware of, that as technology swoops us all up, and
Jeez.
they're usually very vulnerable people that have no means and no resources to be part of this new revolution, this technological revolution. They have no means to talk to their children, vice versa. They have no way to open up
Horrifying.
documents. They have no means to fill out application forms now. Forms are all online where it's clicking and pointing, and then if you're timed out, then you have to re-examine the form, and it becomes extremely frustrating. And you actually need an IT person for somebody to fill out a parenting order or something online. It's terrible.
Yeah. I've done some government forms in my time,
Yeah,
even online. And yeah, even I've struggled through it. And I'm as tech savvy as it gets, Mark.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think pretty close to it, even if they don't say it outright. They're pushing people to use to go online to use technology to do these tasks, right? To complete these forms, to get what they need. But yet they won't give them the means to do that when the people don't have it, right? If you don't have a Chromebook, at least a Chromebook to go online and do this stuff, or a phone. Doesn't have to be an iPhone 13 Pro Max, but something to go online and do this when they're shutting people out of their offices, for goodness sake. At least in that situation that you described, I understand and I appreciate. Believe me, I don't want to go to an office. That's me though. But I have the means to go online. I have my computers and I can do this. Right? That just one office that they're doing that in, or is that kind of across the board that they're
I
moving in that
think in the
direction?
Edmonton region, it's going in that direction. The Edmonton Remand Center is the same thing. It's you can't even bring in devices, but at the same time, you have documents and
Mm-hmm.
that you have to share. The education system, of course, is well adapted, making sure the children and the students that they help have that equipment. But it looks, as this technology revolution evolves, it really lies into great technical supports in the area of our community libraries,
Indeed.
and things like that. I mean, for one thing, is the vast majority of these people have no clouds. They have nothing to store their image on. So, you have a mom with no means. She has birth to her baby, and she's taking 5 or 6 pictures of it. Then, her baby gets apprehended, so she's taking more pictures during visits. But then her phone falls in a mud puddle, and maybe her baby dies of SIDS. Gone. So as we don't have pictures now, we don't have hard copies of documents. So you may fill out these forms, but you have if you lose your phone or you lose that, then you lose everything. You lose all those forms, all these sorts of things that happen, and we haven't looked at the impact it has on people that don't have the financial or capacity. We need to understand that a lot of people don't have the capacity to work on
It just
technology.
makes
Like,
me think I don't want to, again, more the second hour type conversation we keep
yeah,
alluding to. Even recently I had to call the government for something. I'm not sure who at the top or whatever is making these kind of decisions, even in my situation, but it's ridiculous. It's ludicrous. It's not well thought through. It's even to the point of harmful,
yeah.
because of the ripple effect and the impact it has on my life. Never mind people who are less fortunate than I am. And it's incredibly real. No,
And just for a quick example, quickly, is
please.
2 months ago, at least Children's Services took away all their email addresses.
Hmm.
Now I communicate with government office so often, so I know it's first name dot last name
Yeah.
at gov.ab. But they've taken that information off, so you're just left with the name, and please email us. And you're staring at this. How do you email somebody if you don't? And if it's a hard to spell name or it's a common name like John Smith, for no explanation, they've taken away email addresses, so you can't communicate. Many people don't know how to communicate with their child welfare worker or
Okay.
with their probation officer because there's no more email addresses online to contact anybody.
So what do?
They call me.
They call
you know,
you, and you.
but there's somebody like me, and if they're not fortunate to have anybody like that, they suffer the consequences of not being able to communicate at the same and a meaningful manner as other people can.
Okay.
And those consequences could be canceled visits with their children. Those consequences could be breach orders with their probation officer. Those consequences could be far-reaching and have a devastating impact on people.
I got to try to put a positive spin on that somehow. Can people like you, or what is being done, or what could be done to correct that? I guess. I mean, if there's a
Well,
recent changes, like for the people who are being impacted by this, that's very real, as we just described. What can be done to help?
Well, in my case, I've been talking to your MLAs. I've talking to a lot of MLAs, to the child welfare critic.
If I
I
could get a
forget.
hold of my MLA, I would talk to him about it.
They when they're the opposition, they seem to want to talk to you.
They do, yeah.
So luckily, and in a positive spin, um, my MLA and the MLA of most of the people that I work with in Edmonton
Okay.
are members of the New Democratic Party, which is the opposition. So
Yes.
that issue isn't problematic. And I think it's just back to your original question. I think it's just providing awareness to government. You and I and people that are facing the outcomes of decisions are then sort of evaluating it and critiquing it. And if enough people are opposed to a certain way, who knows? They might put their emails back on these government websites. But again, things are done in a way that isn't conducive, or they don't get the eyes and ears and feelings of the people that they're trying to serve,
Yeah.
and they make terrible mistakes, like making themselves in where you can not only communicate with the system, but you can't communicate with your children who has the system. And that goes for hospitals as well. There's all sorts of issues with technology.
Well, again, just makes me wonder about the people who, again, make these decisions, as you say, that aren't well thought out, that aren't don't have seem to have much critical thought involved. That you didn't say that, but I'm going to say that.
Yeah.
Especially given the people that they help. Just to reiterate what you just said, where it's like you're helping these people, you claim to understand these people and what they need, but yet, and then and then you do they do things like this. And then the only way you got to wait months or years to fight back in some way to give that feedback, and then hope that things go back to the way they were, if not better. The lack of compassion there, at least at those levels, because I know full well, at least in my situation, where the people I've had contact with within government have been lovely for the most part, very kind, very they do good work. They're good people, and they've expressed a number of times. And I go, I'm not yelling in your ear, just so you know, you didn't do this. And then they say it's the people up top. It's the decision makers who are making this harder for everybody. Anyway,
Yeah, one of the best examples of this whole technological
yes,
systemic problems with vulnerable people has been the CERB money, and
yes,
so many people on welfare took advantage of CERB. I mean, that's an example. CERB was made to be very easy to obtain.
yes, it
They,
was.
they evaluated all the platforms, and they made the process very simple and very easy. Maybe too easy, because a lot of people made bad decisions of double dipping, not only collecting
That's right.
CERB, but also on Alberta Works,
I've heard
getting
that.
financial benefits. And then, of course, when they had to clean this mess up and get their benefits reinstated, it became a mess because the platforms weren't compatible to people trying to fix their own problems. Like, click here, point there, go to there, reload, can't do it, can't do it. So a lot of frustration there. A lot of parents filling out their income tax so they can get their child tax credits and their CRA money, like GST
Yeah,
and whatever. That has become a little more easier, but it's still very difficult. And for people that don't have the technology, they're forced to go to the library or something like that, and then of course their whole personal information is sitting on a computer that they don't know,
that's right.
and they don't know how to delete it,
That's right.
and they just assume when they hit close or hit the little X that all their personal information is protected, and so they're at a disadvantage. I don't know of any community technology courses that are just free. So, I think if this government wanted a really good initiative, and this could be any of the three levels of government or all combination of all of them, they should be giving out adequate hardware. So
Yes.
why not invest $300 per family for a Chromebook? Adequate hardware, and then when you go to pick up your hardware, they have pre-installed apps that are easy to use, and then there's some sort of tutoring to ensure that these families know how to use this information and
Yeah.
use the equipment they have, and they don't have that. you
No.
know Somebody at child welfare, or I shouldn't pick on child welfare, someone in justice, let's say, will get training every second or third month on the software and the hardware that they're using,
Hmm.
but the people that they're dumping all this information on via hardware, via software, aren't receiving any training or don't have a clue. Like, why is Adobe telling me I can't open this document?
Right.
They don't have a clue how to interact with it, and it really imbalances. It's a power shift,
It
and it
is.
really imbalances our community when government does this. And it's just government. Of course, business has understood how to make their platforms really easy to use. In fact, too easy that if you open up the CBS News or something, all of a sudden you're getting notifications from them for the rest of your life
I know,
on
right?
your email. But so business knows how to make using these platforms very easy, but government, no. And I think that needs to be a real fix. That someone in government needs to take an initiative and look at trying to provide this service.
All right, let's move on to for the time being. What do you love about technology, Mark, and why?
It makes productivity, obviously. If you're literate and you know how to use your technology, it can make things a lot more easier. It can make things much more accurate. If you're recording a meeting, which is its own separate, and you with an MP3 recorder or something, you have it there as fact. It's really improved the lives of people in the area of social justice. Every time a police officer takes down somebody on the middle of Jasper Avenue, everybody's got their phone on.
Yeah.
From my perspective, it helps me personally as the work I do with individual people from hour to hour to hour, but it also helps in the bigger scheme of things. So I will get complaints about excessive force by the Edmonton City Police or whatever, for example, and people will come with all this video from all their friends who were standing around and were showing what happened and showing the interactions. I mean, you need to look at what technology has enabled people to do. CCTV has not only made our streets safer from one end, but it also makes accountability. And again, this is just me,
Mm-hmm.
is that I find that the Edmonton City Police's reasons for not having body cameras very weak, but technology is making systems and people more accountable, which makes my work easier.
So let me touch on that. In your day to day, how do you use technology? What do you use?
I usually bring my just what I have. I have my tablet, or I bring my laptop sometimes because
What
it's
kind of tablet?
Surface. It was donated through Twitter.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. No, it's yeah.
Cool.
My MP3 recorder donated through Twitter.
What kind of MP3 player?
It's a little one that works really good, a little round head. And
Don't know the model or the make or nothing.
no, and I don't have it. I have it in my actually have it at work because I was
Oh, okay.
charging it up. Yeah,
Because it kind of looks like a voice recorder.
yeah, except
Okay.
it's got a little round, two mics on it that
Oh,
cross do an X,
okay.
and it works really well. And I have an Android phone which I hate.
Which
It
phone?
it's a Galaxy A50,
Okay.
which is a
I've
midstream.
heard mixed things about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I got it in 2019, and the problem I have is sometimes when people call me in the car,
Yeah.
it's echoing, and I
Ah.
can't seem to fix that. So I'm almost tempted to get a new phone here.
Have you tried like a Bluetooth headset? Not like you're wearing now, but like a Bluetooth ear thing.
Yeah, I could. But my car, when it does work, it works really well, and I'm
Okay.
driving and I can.
Might be the car that
Um,
I don't know. Yeah.
yeah, but this phone,
Bluetooth can be finicky.
yeah, it can, and I think it's just an issue with this Galaxy
Yeah.
model. What else for technology do I have?
Yes. You said you have a what kind of computer? Laptop, I guess you're using right now, right?
Oh, it's yeah, it's Game of Republic's
Okay.
laptop computer. It's heavy, but you know what? It does processing really easy,
Yeah.
and I like the tactile feel of a good keyboard. It makes it's a nice screen size. The
So,
battery life sucks on it
so
now.
this one we're on right now is your gaming laptop, and then
Yeah,
you said
yeah.
did you say you have another one?
No,
No.
this and the Surface Pro. Yeah, I've looked at iPads and that, but again, it's just tactile. I used to love BlackBerry, and again,
Yes.
it was just I'd wish BlackBerry had stayed ahead of the curve
Yeah.
because if they'd made a smartphone with a tactile,
Yeah.
I think they could have, but they lost that race.
They did. Yeah. I mean, tactile wasn't for me, but that's again personal preference.
And I get a lot of donated phones that I donate to
Yes.
people. So I get, I put a call out, and I'm putting a call out now that these are lifesavers. If they're wiped and cleaned and easy to set up, I'll give them. And you people that are living in back alleys and in tents and that, they're always getting these broken or stolen,
Mm.
or they haven't eaten in 3 days and have to pawn it. These kind of phones, any smartphone is really great. And I had a business once that gave me about 15 phones, and they were amazing. But that's just an example of
Yeah.
where if there's a business out there and they're upgrading on their cell phones, and
Hmm.
if they want to give me a bunch of white phones, they would be well
Yeah,
used. I
and I
can
would
tell
add
you that.
honestly. I mean, I want to emphasize this even more than you are right now. You're a humble guy.
Oh,
It's life saving. Every single many people. Hence, how we all know this. How popular, like everyone's got. Almost everybody has a Android phone, an iPhone, some version of it. And we had them in drawers. Like at this point in time, where smartphones are 10 plus years old, we have them sitting in drawers or what have you, or waiting to be recycled or in these things. And I mean, if they're dead, they're useless to you. But as long as they
yeah,
can be fully charged
yeah,
and are reliable, just
yeah.
because you don't need that particular phone or device anymore, does it mean? I mean, recycling is a good thing. I won't knock that, but before you do that,
Yeah, well, it's getting recycled again.
it is,
If
yeah,
someone's using it,
and it's really being put to a very important use. I mean, I suppose certain people in the less fortunate community can afford some sort of phone plan so they can put a SIM in it either now or later. But it's also really important to recognize that you don't need either a plan or a SIM card to make an emergency call. So you can call 911 and all it needs to do is turn on and it'll grab onto it. It's the built-in technology. It'll grab onto a network for free, and you can call 911. And I know that you've mentioned that on social media a few times as well. If you have one lying around in a drawer, whatever, thinking of recycling it, who knows what, please strongly consider sending those devices to the Coalition for Justice and Human Rights. Get in touch with Mark.
I,
Uh,
I can provide the mailing address as well, so it's not just you don't have
okay.
to if
Yeah.
you live in
If you
if
want
you
to
live
say,
in Winnipeg. So
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
No, I live in Red Deer.
yeah,
But I could put it in the, you could say it if you want to, but I'll put it in the show notes as well. All of this.
yeah. It's just look below at the show notes,
Okay.
and
All right.
that's my address that you can mail me phones,
Yeah.
Chromebooks, anything like that are really important.
Chromebooks
And
too. Yeah.
even if they're
That's why I said
even
devices. Yeah. Not just
yeah,
phones. Yeah.
even if they're cracked screens or whatever, it's
Yeah.
it will be well used, and it's life saving.
And like I say, even for the people who are in these situations where their possessions get stolen or wrecked all the time just due to the circumstances, right? They get dropped in a mud puddle or somebody else steals them. So then they need another one. So the demand never ends.
Yeah, exactly.
Hope I've emphasized that enough because I really think it's important and it really truly is like it can be life saving. Person can afford a basic phone plan with some data or
Well,
at least can
well, they have SIM cards. Kids take their SIM cards everywhere, and they get pay
okay,
as you go.
perfect, yeah,
So they can change all when they know their password to their Google account.
right.
They can access their information pretty well universally.
And even beyond that, for these functioning devices where they're handheld computers, that's what they are. Yes, that you can make phone calls to 911 or otherwise, but goodness knows, we all know that the various kind of apps and abilities that these phones have, everything from cameras to again, just the variety of different things we can do on our phones. And by donating them, that enables these less fortunate people to do those things as well, even if they don't have a phone plan attached to it. They can walk into a coffee shop or something and use the Wi-Fi network instead. Just these different situations. So it's not just a matter of, though it's critical, of course, to be able to call emergency services. People can apply for government assistance even through these devices that enable that enables them to do that
Yeah.
when they don't have means otherwise. So please strongly consider donating your old devices, your phones, your tablets, your computers to Mark and his organization.
Yeah, and there's also other organizations, if you
Of
know of
course.
one that works with, they'd probably, no one's going to say no to a phone, a donated
No,
phone. So,
no, Bissell
yeah,
Center, I can name others. Yeah. What would you say has been the hardest or most difficult year for your organization so far, and why, and how have you overcome it?
I think, like many, COVID has had a really huge impact on the work that we've been able to do and what we can do and can't do. You know, a lot of my work involves direct face-to-face interactions with clients that
Mm,
have
very true.
and have very vulnerable health issues, make them extremely vulnerable. But it also puts people like me at risk too because we're interacting, and there's an opportunity for COVID to spread,
It
and it did
is.
spread. I caught COVID off a 5-year-old that gave me a hug.
Oh, wow.
I went to
Oh,
drop off some food to a mom with her little 5-year-old, and little munchkin gave me a hug, and I remember the mom said, "Oh, he's got COVID," and sure enough, I got COVID, and I spent 11 days in a hotel room,
oh, I remember that. Yeah,
isolated.
you
Yeah,
tweeted
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. So I spent 11 days in a hotel room, not being able to do much other than play my games. That was a very difficult time.
Sounds like you're fully vaccinated at least.
Oh yeah, I'm
Okay.
you know,
Good.
but also I strongly disagree with people that don't get vaccinated, but I respect their opinions, and I respect for whatever reasons they don't get vaccinated or don't do this or that. But my self-health and that
Yeah.
of the
And the
people I
people
work
you help,
with,
that's right.
yeah. So I respect that, but if
I
you're
mean,
not coming in my car
yeah, but
you're not coming out of my car without a mask. Sorry.
yes. And to your point about the 5-year-old, at least certainly at that point, I'm not sure about now, where they couldn't even get vaccinated.
Yeah, no, he couldn't get vaccinated then, and I
Yeah.
couldn't get vaccinated. The vaccines weren't out. I got it in
Okay.
February of 2020 when it first came out.
Oh, wow. So right
Yeah,
at the
yeah,
right at the start. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so COVID's been difficult. When we first started, when I was let go from legal aid and just thinking of what I could do and how I
Sure.
could do it, I thought of this crazy idea of maybe if I very generally explain the work I do and why I think it's valuable for our communities, people will understand that and agree with that and help support me. And so that was a very iffy time. I really wanted to keep doing what I
Yeah.
wanted to do. I had blacklisted myself, Kevin, from every organization and every system over the last 20 years. There's no way in hell the justice system or the child welfare system or the education system or the healthcare system would ever hire me to do what I do,
Oh,
or
that's
even
what you
something
mean.
so.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I had blacklisted myself through my advocacy and pushing back on issues and problems and standing up
You
for
think,
people. So
yeah.
I knew at that time,
What a horrible response to that from them by them, by the way.
well,
Not to get into it, but yeah,
yeah, but at the same time, it provided me an opening, and
it did.
I hope people see what I do as something
Massively,
valuable.
extremely, incredibly
Yeah.
important.
I don't have a marketing budget. I don't have we don't have a paid board. We don't have anything, and all those expenses when I'm paying for someone's phone plan or when I'm paying for someone's
Another excellent
mail.
point. Yeah, it's not just the organization's expenses you're covering here; it's the people you're helping sometimes too.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
all those expenses, I cover by myself, and if I don't have anything coming in,
that's right.
I can't put anything out. So I like to see myself as a sort of a conduit to really help people, advocate for them. But again, the starting of this whole idea was a really tough time, and then a few months later with COVID.
I remember how sudden that was for you. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
But I mean, clearly from the get go, you figured it out pretty quick in terms of I want to you want to I want to continue doing the work that you're doing in whatever capacity you can. And next thing you know, you're forming or helping to form this organization to continue that work.
yeah.
Every day, I'm flooded with heartbreaking texts and phone calls. Pleas for help asking for food, a safe ride, or helping a child in need. I'm on the road, often driving 200 kilometers day and night. I'm Mark Cherrington, and over the years, I've established relationships with families who don't have anyone. Many of you have helped me by giving money, and I thank you. I'm overwhelmed by your generosity, and I'm asking you to make it part of your yearly goodwill. Each month, for the price of a carton of milk or a bus ticket, you could build up our resources at the Coalition for Justice and Human Rights. Together, you will help provide diapers for a baby, or fight an eviction notice for a single mother, or help that 12-year-old sexually exploited child. These issues are important, not only for the vulnerable, but all of us, by making our community that much kinder.
Right after I left work, I got talked into running for federal politics, and
I remember that. Yeah.
yeah, and I ran for a very socialist party, which I'm proud of, the NDP.
Yes.
But at that time, the riding wasn't very socialist, and I lost miserably. But I don't think I'll ever run again for public office. It just really turned me off.
Yeah.
It was really about, again, image. Yeah, and
No, I don't want to get political here, but I
yeah,
appreciate
yeah.
the fact that you ran.
Anybody that takes the time to volunteer,
Absolutely.
to run, to deserves my hats off to them. And and this is what I love about Canada is I may disagree with people ideologically or on policies or issues, but I certainly approve of their fellow love of our country and wanting to make positive change and taking the time out to volunteer and run. And I always give anybody that comes up to my door from a political party a warm welcome and 5 minutes of my day to
right.
understand where they're coming from.
But anyway, so you're saying, just to bring it back to technology, the question for a second, you mentioned, and goodness knows 2020 was hard for all of us. I don't mean to generalize that, because I know it was a very individual impact. But for your organization and for yourself, obviously it made things harder. Of course, the people who you were helping or trying to help, that impacted them, and that added stress to, oh my God, an already stressful situation.
Exactly, because not only did I have to take precautions, and I took as minimal precautions as I could, so I could still, like, I would invite, still have people riding my car in January with my windows rolled down.
So, something, yeah.
Yeah, but what happened was, again, systems, other than maybe the healthcare system, which had to engage with these people and with everybody and help them, and the education system to some extent, but the welfare system and the justice system, they isolated themselves from their clients.
As you were kind of talking about before, that's probably how it started.
Yeah. So it made things double worse for clients, because their ability to talk to their children who were in care, or to get their financial benefits from their ACE worker, or had an issue with their public guardian, all of that contact was very narrowed and screened out. So it became almost impossible for some people to access basic needs, human basic needs.
I'm in a relatively fortunate position, but as far compared to some others that are out there. But I will say this: at times I have needed what's called income support, right? As one example. Again, just the hoops you have to jump through, the process, the forms, all this, right? They make it, not the people I'm talking to, but the people behind the scenes and at the top that I was talking about. They make it so much harder than it needs to be, than it should be. And all I'm asking for, and all the people who you help are asking for, are to have their basic needs met.
Exactly.
At the least.
Yeah.
The very basic needs met, to have that process be made as easy and as accessible as possible, because God knows they're already stressed out of their freaking minds at times. Yeah. And then to add on to the whole COVID thing of what you're talking about, wow, I can't even think about how hard that would be. So I appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah, like some of the clients I was working with, particularly those at the Edmonton Remand Center, they were locked up by themselves 23 and a half hours a day.
You mean like solitary confinement kind of thing?
Yeah, for months on end because of COVID. And it really had a mental impact on those kind of folks. And understanding that the Remand Center, no one's been found guilty, or the vast majority of people in there haven't been found guilty of anything. and they're treated that way. It's not that if you are guilty, you should be treated that way, but
Yeah, I
still,
mean,
it's
I want to keep this kind of technology focused,
yeah.
but at the same time, it's where else do they put them? How else do they protect them from this horrible,
Yeah,
pandemic,
yeah,
horrible COVID, and from getting
yeah,
it and dying from it, maybe, and
yeah,
all these
yeah.
things. It has a mental health impact. Clearly, it has a mental health impact, but I don't know what else they would do. You have,
They couldn't do anything, and
yeah.
it wasn't about blaming. And I don't think anybody really blamed the remand center because they had to keep their staff safe and they had to keep the people that were living there safe.
Hmm.
And the body became the most important thing, and the mind and the mental health became a secondary issue. And that's very unfortunate. But I don't see another formula they could have used.
I mean,
I think the
for
justice system
for
could have.
visitors and these kind of things, like did
Well,
they
no, visit. Now this is another interesting thing.
yeah,
Visits have changed now. Visits are all like you and I. You go to the visitation center
yeah.
and you dial in and talk to your loved one. I have mothers who've been in prison since 2017 who haven't held their babies. Well, they're 5 and 6 years old now, but because of visits, because visits aren't in person, they're on the screen.
Yeah.
They haven't touched their children, and touch is an important part of interactions and the way the remand center is set up. The justice system could have changed more drastically, and they could have kept people at home with under stricter conditions,
Hmm.
or not utilize the remand center so much as they did, because it had every time you sent someone away in the remand, at least in my personal opinion, you were sentencing them to a very or confining them to a very
Hmm.
limited facility where it's going to have a drastic impact on their mental health.
Yeah, and like I say, for I was thinking of kind of in terms of technology, right? Because for you said that the are I guess women and is it just men or is it both sexes? Both. Okay, yeah.
Both. I
So
mean, they're
yeah,
separated by
yeah.
units, but obviously,
So they haven't held their babies, I guess, which is horrible. Like before the pandemic, after the pandemic, I'm sure they'll allow visitors. So have they had like talked on? Like, have they or will they do they connect on like Zoom and use technology to keep in touch, or
yes.
was that shut down too during the pandemic?
I believe it was shut down on units that had COVID outbreaks. Now, that's my recollection.
Okay.
Uh, but again, the Zoom calls were 1 hour at most.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, people don't understand if you're confined to an institution for 30 months and you don't have the feelings of touch. It's I think it's a great human rights violation. It should have been made more available to
There you go. Yeah.
clients, but it wasn't.
So for the hardest year, you said it was 2020. How have you overcome that? Like you said, you've rolled down windows, you've done what you can, right? How has technology enabled you to overcome it?
Well, having the opportunity to have a Zoom meeting with somebody, or provide a Chromebook for somebody so they could. So when kids couldn't go to school, there was
Hmm.
issues of Chromebooks to families. They'd only allow one Chromebook per family, so some kids weren't being able to go to school. So I was able to overcome it by getting donations of Chromebooks
Hmm.
and giving them to children that didn't have any means so they could participate in their class. Make sure that the client or the people I was helping would have a computer or an adequate ability to participate fully and completely in the meetings that they were required to be at. And I was at Zoom and WebEx, and I forget all of them.
Hmm.
Child welfare uses a specialized one. Uh, they were able to really keep the business of human rights going from my end of the spectrum to help people, but also to keep the business of government, of the crown, to continue, to keep children safe. I mean, sometimes keeping children safe is actually removing children from the home.
Right. Yeah.
Government was able to continue doing what it's supposed to do, what we expect it to do with the advent of technology. If this COVID had hit us in the 80s or 90s,
Hmm.
or even the early 2000s,
Yeah.
it would have been very different in a much colder world. We wouldn't have Zoom. We wouldn't have abilities for people to communicate with each other.
Hmm.
And I think, issues in regards to suicide, mental health, trauma to children would have been a lot more destructive than it is in 2019, 2020 when it first came.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. I think technology's saved us from going over the precipice. It saved us from going beyond our event horizon and get sucked into that black hole with no way out because of technology. Again, if COVID had hit us in the 90s or the 80s, we'd have a much sadder society today.
I think so. Yeah, would have been drastically different. Yeah, I mean, even the work that I've been doing during this time for my business wouldn't exist without the modern capabilities of technology. So, in contrast, what's been the best year of your organization so far, and why?
It's going to sound weird, but again, late 2020, 2021, and up to today, I've really been able to engage systems the way I want to engage them and fight for clients' rights because of technology. I've also been able to secure, I have office space donated to me
Hmm.
and all the infrastructure associated with office space, such as envelopes and printers and scanners and
Wow, who donated
those.
that? Did you want to give
Liberty
me
Law, Liberty
Liberty
Law.
Law? Okay.
Look down below.
Yes, Liberty Law.
If ever by any chance you
Yeah,
are become in conflict with the justice system, before you talk to the police, talk to Liberty Law.
got it.
They're one of Canada's largest criminal law firms, and they're a really great group of
As soon as you
men
said the
and
name, it
women.
rang a bell. It just didn't occur to me a moment ago. Yeah, you mentioned them. Absolutely, you
Yeah,
have.
yeah,
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you got the
yeah,
office space with everything that you
yeah,
need to.
yeah.
'Cause obviously, you can't run everything. I don't think you can from home.
No,
Um,
no.
yeah.
And
When was that donated?
that was donated actually right before COVID,
Mhm.
but I wasn't able to take advantage of it till really uh, late last year and beginning of this year. So they've been really supportive and
Yeah,
really
couldn't do the whole office thing during the pandemic. Yeah,
no, and my wife,
yeah.
she works for the federal government and she's working from home too. So she has the office space. So it would have been very difficult for me to, and it would be, still continues to be difficult for me to work from home with technology. So I need an office,
Okay.
and I need that technology that an office provides, which is really interesting because, downtown's a shell, it's a ghost. I
Yeah,
think 20% of the
certainly
people
was.
utilize,
Yeah,
in my case, having that office was life saving, was really career saving, I should say,
career saving. Okay,
and allowed me to be the best advocate I could.
wonderful, wonderful. So that so there's the donation of the office space, but it was the you said late 2020, and then since then has been the and
Late
how long?
2021.
Late 2021.
Yeah,
Sorry,
but
to
yeah, yeah,
until now. So
yeah. I really found my groove. Yeah,
so the last several months.
yeah.
Wonderful. When did you start the coalition?
I saw the dust storm coming in about 2013.
Storm. Okay.
That's what I call it. So when I worked for the Youth Criminal Defense Office and the from 1993 up to about 2013, it was fiercely independent.
Hmm.
We were, as long as we were professional and respectful, we could push back on government. We could advocate for our clients. And around 2013, the governance of the Youth Criminal Defense Office, where I was working at, started to degrade, and decisions and issues were being made with legal aid as opposed to the Youth Criminal Defense Office. And then legal aid sort of took us over. So in 2013, seeing this death storm coming, I and a bunch of like-minded folks who were also having these issues decided to develop the coalition so that we could have a platform to help those who had issues with not having access to basic needs, not being given
So
any
that was
dignity.
2013, you said?
Yeah, started working and
Jeez,
developing.
almost a decade now.
Yeah, yeah, but it was pretty. Again, up until I left, it was pretty well submarine warfare. We were, it was Battle of the Atlantic 2. We were under the waves and fighting below and
Yeah.
below the radar. But yeah, because issues were starting to develop that I could not fight for my clients in public the way I used to. That I would have to use my verbiage very differently, and social justice issues would have to be justified in the context of how that helps someone's criminal charges
Mm.
or someone's family matter charges. So it was becoming more and more restrictive and less independent. And I think I was becoming a very sharp thorn in legal aid's thigh.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I had developed that. 5 of us have developed that in 2013, and it was my lifeboat when the Titanic sank, and
Yeah.
you know, I was able to get off that ship, or I was pushed off the ship, to be
You have
honest.
interesting analogies or
Yeah,
metaphors there, Mark.
yeah.
What does the future hold for your organization and the kind of work that you do without getting too deep into it?
I think I would ask the question to your viewers and listeners, because I'm completely dependent on community donations and the help of like-minded people like myself to support what I do and what the coalition does. But if we're given the resources to continue doing what we are doing, then I think the future holds a community where human rights are always respected and stood up for. That dignity, whether you're in prison or you're in child welfare, a foster home, or you're a single parent that's just lost their child, means something. That we'll make sure that you have that dignity and that you have access to justice. Being able to support people and rip into government and make sure that change happens for the best, the betterment.
Or the motorcycle ripping by.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for the betterment of our clients. Make sure
Yes.
that happens is yeah. I
Yeah.
see it
So
very
what I think what you're asking is for people to contact their representatives in government, to contact MLAs, MPs, even, and anybody else they can think of that will have some, I guess, influence or be in a position to make these decisions or lean on people who do, to give organizations like yours more resources to help more people, or even to help the people that you're helping better.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, government with this surplus, I'm hoping government invests in people,
Ah, yes, the surplus.
not corporations and not the rich, but really help our social safety nets. That would,
Yes,
I
absolutely.
mean, there'd be nothing better in my mind than me being put out of work.
Huh.
You know, and to achieve that, we need a government that invests in our communities, invests in those that are less fortunate. But in the meantime, people invest in the coalition or other organizations. I think people need to get
Yeah. I
have
don't think, honestly, Mark,
active.
I appreciate what you're saying, but I don't think the need's going to go away completely.
No.
We're talking, about the world here. Hopefully it becomes less. I don't see them going away. So I think services like yours that you provide, the coalition provides, will always be needed. I just sincerely hope that not nearly as in demand.
Yes, exactly.
And I think that's we should use that surplus. You're absolutely right. It'd be a drop in the bucket compared to what's needed, but it's something.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we have a real problem with housing. We have no social housing. When these development proposals come into play, they talk about affordable housing. Well, that's
Mhm.
not social housing.
No, it's not.
We need social housing, and we need a lot of it. And until we have that, then children are still going to get apprehended. Parents are still going to suffer
Let me get you
mental health issues.
let me get you to define that. What is social housing, Mark?
Housing that's free or subsidized, where you build row housing for families or people that are hard to house or unable to afford rent, and ensure that they have a healthy living environment where they don't have to worry about the cold, that they can feel comfortable,
Mhm.
that they have access to technology, that they can thrive to be the best they can be. People can't do that if they're living in a tent in the ravine or on a farm field somewhere.
Oh, you're not getting ahead that way, are you?
Yeah,
No.
no. We're spending a lot more on healthcare costs, criminal justice costs, and child welfare costs by not housing people.
Yeah.
So we need a big influx of social housing. That would be the number one thing that we need out of most. And I haven't heard any announcement of them building 200 units or 400 units. We need thousands and thousands of units for this crisis.
As I mentioned, coming up in 2 weeks is part 2 of this conversation with Mark Cherrington. He tells a couple of stories from his years of experience helping the most vulnerable in society, with both negative and positive outcomes, as I mentioned before. These are not easy stories to hear. If you'd like to be a guest on Kevin Talks Tech to discuss your home business or how you've been working from home and how you're using technology, please contact me by going to my website at kevintalkstech.ca. And frankly, they're shocking and may even be triggering, but they are very real and an honest representation of the harsh realities some in our society face. They deserve to be heard. Please make a point to watch or listen to this podcast and share it as well. Thank you. Once again, you can connect with Mark on Twitter at Mark Cherrington. That's MarkCherrington. Coming up in episode 5 of Kevin Talks Tech, I have a conversation with Edmonton-based graphic designer Serena Tang. In episode 6 of Kevin Talks Tech, I'll have a conversation with Heather Lyon. In episode 6 of Kevin Talks Tech, it'll be another two-parter, and we'll hear from Heather Lyon, who provides accounting software training to small businesses, and she'll talk about her adventures in Northern Canada doing just that. She'll talk about her adventures in Northern Canada doing accounting training in remote communities as part of her business. She's visited communities such as Inuvik, Tuktoyaktuk, and more. Thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode. We'll see you next time.